still learning to like be comfortable with like being on video in general with myself. So it's like to have another person in the house that hears me, I'm just kind of like, please leave. This was also the first time of like me feeling like I can just be myself without like being like so like worried about what the other person thinks or how the other person feels. I think that's why I like push back so much.
Y'all about to get some real inside scoop right here, man.
So you better do this or
you make seem. I was like, girl, you better be home at.
Don't have me catch you in the streets.
You better like if there's an internal issue between me and you, like an open relationship is not going to fix that.
It brings refuge, and we ran and hide by light of the moon.
I know you don't really believe in like unconditional love, but I know that you have, like, I know that that's within those conditions that you like are going to continue to love me through. Like you're going to continue to love me through struggle. You're going to continue to allow me to speak my mind and not necessarily just say like, all right, like I'm out, you know. Like I think you allowed that, so that's why I've been able to like feel comfortable enough to talk my stuff, whatever, you know.
So yeah, I think on that point of like unconditional love, because I think people gonna be like, what do you mean by like that? I don't believe in unconditional love. Like when I say that, like it's not that I don't believe. When you say unconditional love, you're saying like this person can do anything to me, and I'm going to still love them. I don't believe in that. Like I think if a person is abusive, deceptive, manipulative, is, you know, I think when we really push on unconditional love and we don't really have in-depth conversations about it, we just throw it out there as a buzzword. Like it doesn't account for those other things, and I think like I've seen people like use unconditional love to excuse abuse. You know, yeah. I've seen people use
ride or die.
Right, ride or die, unconditional love to excuse somebody being continually manipulative to them. And so for me, yeah, no, love has conditions. It should at least, because yeah, if you keep giving your heart to somebody and they keep breaking it, they're not worthy of that. But now, with that being said, it doesn't mean I'm not saying that like I don't believe that a relationship is not going to go through some trial and some fire and get tested and things like that. That is what it is. That's expected. All relationships are going to go through periods where like that fire dimmers down and it's kind of like, okay, what do we do, right? But yeah, so I think you know, that's when you think about like not unconditional love, but how do we work through a relationship?
So I guess when you say like working through relationships, I know that like obviously that comes like you think that like love comes with struggle, right? So when the going gets tough, like do you feel like it's okay to just take a break or to seek other opportunities?
You mean like open relationship?
For lack of better terms, yes.
I mean, I you know, to be honest, I mean, I think all of these things are like case by case situations. So, you know, that's, I think oftentimes when people talk about like what people should do in relationships, like there's no one shoe fit all situation, right? Like or remedy for anything. Like a lot of it is case by case. All I can do to somebody is give my advice on this is what worked for me, might not work for you, right? Or it might work for you, or you may have to take it and remix it and whatever. But yeah, it's not like it's not that per se. Like, nah, you know, I think like the whole idea, because I know the other big thing with Will and Jada was like, oh, well, we knew they was open anyway and stuff like that. So I guess for me, it's like I don't believe in open relationships per se. I guess I still wrestle with that idea of what that even means. I think that means different things for different, I think it's subjective. I think what's an open relationship means something different to different people. So I mean, I definitely like, you know, so I guess some of that is rooted in like the idea of like what is contradiction between polygamy and monogamy. And so I guess for me, I don't believe in either. I believe that I don't believe people are naturally or biologically monogamous. I don't think people are naturally or biologically polygamous. I think people are. You know, I think we go through phases in our life where we are polygamous, and I think we go through chapters of phases in our life that we're monogamous. And I think like to kind of like put this really rigid, you know, box of like, oh, I'm polygamous or I'm monogamous, and you're like 20. Like, come on. Like, you got so much life to live, you're gonna be shifting through that thing, you know, so many times.
So you feel like age is like a partially to play with that? Or?
No. Well, I always think when you're younger, you shouldn't say definitive things.
Okay.
You know, like I think when you're 20, you shouldn't say, for things like that, not things that require like personal development and experience. Like if you want to say at 20, I'm an anti-racist, I'm an anti-sexist, like whatever, that's different, right? Because that's more of a core belief, whereas like polygamy, monogamy, all of those are things that are based on experience, I think, more so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think people are either one. I think, I've gone through chapters in my life where I was monogamous as hell, and I wanted to be. You know, I didn't want to be like, now I'm in a chapter of my life where I'm monogamous as hell, and I don't want to be anything else. You know what I'm saying? I've gone through chapters of my life where I was living very polygamously. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I think that's a part of life, as long as you're not, I think that the thing is like, as long as you're being open and honest and not manipulative, you know. I think that's another thing, is like, when we talk about like open relationships or polygamy, is that people aren't being, some people can kind of take and well, I think in both monogamy and polygamy can take those things and be very manipulative. So I think the key is to not do those things. Because like I said, like, you know, I've probably been Will, Jada, and August, right? So, you know, I've definitely probably done some people wrong, you know, and not really understanding it, you know, until I got older and was able to reflect on, you know, and when I say done people wrong, I mean like not handle, not like I was manipulative or deceitful or anything like that. For me, it was like I didn't always know how to end things. Like when I was kind of like over a situation, I didn't always know how to necessarily end it.
Close the chapter.
Yeah. So I think it's, you know, I think people are neither. So I think for me, it's like when people are like, oh, people are biologically polygamous or naturally monogamous, it's like, nah, people are. People go through chapters of their life, and some of those chapters are longer than others. Like sometimes you go through a really long polygamous chapter in your life. Sometimes you go through a really long monogamous chapter, you know what I'm saying, in your life. And it's like, that just is what it is.
Yeah. I think for me, like something that you said is kind of like around like certain periods in life, but then I think also us being in this generation has kind of also impacted that as well, because I mean, when you think back to the old days, like the polygamy wasn't accepted in some areas, but it wasn't accepted in others. Like I know for me, like I come from a culture where polygamy is the okay thing for men. So yeah, like I mean, polygamy is the okay thing for men, so therefore like women just kind of have to kind of put up with, like, if their husband wants a second wife, that's almost kind of like it's selfish of them to not accept, you know. And it's almost like, oh yeah, that's part of the parameters of your love when you get married to somebody, that you are willing to kind of like put up with whatever they do, especially like, yeah, I guess like even when it comes to like our past conversation we were having earlier about just like a male's role, and me like obviously like living in a Western like diaspora, like I have kind of like broken the chains of like what's expected of a woman, but I still to some extent hold true to some of the things, because I'm just like, all right, well, I know that a man still takes a lead, you know, subconsciously. That's kind of like what I always thought about, and I had to continue to challenge myself around that. But I think with like with polygamy and polyamory, I think people are still figuring things out, which is why they have these like generic expectations of like what like an open relationship is and what being open means, you know. And I think people also assume that like there's no boundaries. And I feel like that's one thing I challenge people the most about, like, even if you are in an open relationship, it doesn't mean that you don't have boundaries. Like, you have to set the boundaries within that relationship, you know, like not all open relationships will be the same. Like, you know, if you're still kind of like have a relationship with your primary partner or whatever the case is, then like that person still has to agree with whatever you're willing to do. Like, whether it be like you guys having emotional relations with people or sexual relations with people or both, like you still have to agree upon that. I know for us, like we've kind of to some extent explored that conversation.
Of what? I'm like, Will now, what?
Of entanglements with outside of this relationship. And yeah, I think we had a really interesting conversation. So, like, what?
And I think, like, oh, you're gonna ask me?
I guess, yeah, like I kicked it off personally because I don't know. I just felt it in the air. It was like one of those like seasons in our relationship where it was just like, I don't know. We just felt like that there was something off, and whenever we kind of feel our energy shifting, we always like, you know, come to the brown table and like really like talk about like our feelings and stuff. So
right.
Yeah, I was just like
y'all about to get some real inside scoop right here, man.
So yeah, so there was this one time period in our relationship where I guess I kind of kicked it off, the conversation of just like open relationships. It was something that kind of like had been circulating within like my friend circle to some capacity, and I just kind of wanted to like see like how he felt about it. And I think we were also kind of like dealing with a little bit of disconnect, but we were still trying to be nice. But we were still like trying to figure out what it was, because we had, I mean, I don't think it was like, you know, we didn't wrong each other or anything like that, you know. So I think that's the reason why we were still figuring it out. So yeah, we ended up coming to the brown table and really getting to the bottom of things. So how did you feel like when I like kicked off that conversation?
Yeah, so I guess to kind of add more context, it was like, you know, I think we were kind of distant during this time frame, you know, for a variety of reasons. You know, work schedules. You know, both of me and her both are involved in the community and stuff. So you know that. So yeah, I think it was so off bat, like the time we could actually spend together was very. We were fighting for that, right? And then on top of that, I don't think we were fighting to prioritize spending time with each other. And so yeah, I mean, I think we went through a period of, and I think this happens in relationships. I don't think that it's. I think it should be expected. I think at times of like feeling like underappreciated, distant, like that you're not a priority. I think if you get into a relationship and you don't think that's going to happen, I think you're setting yourself up for failure. I think the main thing is like, how are you going to work through that? So yeah, so I think in this period, probably like we addressed it probably like months into it, but I'm sure the roots of it probably started months before we had the conversation,
yeah.
Right? And so yeah, I think it was a period of which like my eyes were wandering, and I think yours were too. You know what I'm saying? Because we weren't getting that appreciation or like affirmation
yeah.
From each other. You know. So I think like we were, yeah, our eyes were wandering. I know mine were. I know you expressed yours were too, right? So yeah, our eyes were wandering, and then I think just kind of like, yeah, I was very like no to like open relationships, like nah, ain't happening.
Yeah.
And then she was like working on me for a little bit, like she was working. Hold on, she was working on me for a couple of months, like. Having these conversations with me about our open relationship, having these conversations. So when we finally had the real big conversation about it, I was kind of for it. I was like, okay, like, all right, let's have an open relationship then, like, And then she was like, she just did an about face, like, I don't really know about this anymore. And I was like, wait, what? You done spent all these months talking to me about having an open relationship and now you don't want to do it. But I think one thing that like really, what you said, like that really stuck out was you were like if there's an internal issue between me and you, like an open relationship is not going to fix that. Mm-hmm. You know, us messing around or courting other people, like if there's a disconnect between us, like looking for attention or something in another person isn't going to like resolve that contradiction.
Right.
We have to resolve that contradiction, right? So if you feel unappreciated, if you feel like I don't appreciate you, or if you feel like I don't affirm you, or if you like that's like you dating or me dating other people is not going to resolve that. Right. Like that's going to come through. We have to address that head on, right. Kind of, and not run from it, and be open and honest about it. And you know, true. I think we were.
I'll correct something that you said really
Go
briefly.
for it. Shoot your shot.
So, like I said, my initial start to the conversation is because we have a lot of like hypothetical conversations in general, and there was already a lot of like kind of conversation about open relationships within my friends group. So it's kind of like that's why I brought it to like within our relationship. It was never.
I feel like she was softening me up. She was trying to soften me up.
It was never initially like, oh yeah, like we're gonna end up being in an open relationship ourselves. Like I actually never even thought that you would kind of like be open to that at all. Like because of the fact that when we got into this relationship, I was a little bit more kind of like free or like open, and you were kind of like, when we get into relationships, you do this, this, and this, and you don't cross this line, period. And I was just like, okay, you know. But this also has to do with you know, just the differences in our conditioning as well. And I think now that I've like to go back to your point about like seasons and stuff like that, I am definitely in a more monogamous season of like kind of just feeling the need to kind of abide by certain like boundaries and stuff. And it's not even because of your expectations, because initially I was thinking like, okay, yeah, it's because of your expectations that I'm like trying to meet up to and stuff. But I think over time it started to be more so because I just have an understanding like that people be on games, like people like, you know, people will try to enter your life and you think that it's a friendship, but then they end up actually trying to develop something with you and try to wait to see where there's an opening, and then you kind of have to shut it down then and there, you know, like. And I think I had to learn that the hard way, like, you know, in multiple situations. Like there's been times where I assume that like an opposite like sex person is okay with a friendship, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool, and I'm just kind of like, you know, a little bit more open-minded about that, and then all of a sudden like something happens that just kind of like switches my perspective, like maybe they are interested in me.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, like, me and her are always very open about those type of situations. So, yeah, she would tell me like, oh, you know, I met this person and yada yada, and I would just, you know, like sometimes I would be like, okay, whatever, you know, whatever, I don't care. And sometimes I would be like, so it wasn't even like you made it seem like I was like this like possessive, like, you know, yeah, but it was more so like, all right, like do you see the moves he trying to make? And she would be like, you're overreacting. And I would be like, sometimes I would be like, you know, because obviously, you know, my sweetheart is very beautiful, right? So I would be like, sometimes I would have to play the, you know, all right, okay, all right, you'll see. But and then sometimes when I felt like it was like, took some steps ahead, I have to be like, I don't know, like personally, and it was never like a you can't do this, but like what I had to learn from like past relationships was like I have to say how I feel, because if I don't, I'm gonna hold on to it, become passive aggressive, and it's gonna be a bigger issue later down the line. So, you know, I would just say, look, I'm not comfortable with that. Now, you know, after I say that, you do with it what you may.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so there was never like a situation in which, you know, you better not do this, right? But I would just say, look, I'm not comfortable with that. So, at this point, you know where I'm coming with it at. So don't.
I mean, if you want to stay, then.
Yeah, just know what it is, right? So I think it was like that.
Yeah, I think. Well, yeah, it's not to go in on you and make it seem like you were kind of like, all right, like, you better do this or
you make it seem I was like, girl, you better be home at.
Don't have me catch you in the streets.
You better be home at 5. 5 want to die.
No. It was like no, because obviously with me, like I had a little bit more serious relationship prior to this, but it wasn't that serious. It was like just kind of like touching the surface of being in an actual relationship. Prior to that, I was in more so like situationships. So I was kind of like always abiding by very open standards of what like loyalty is, because of me always having men set the parameters, right? So it's just like the men set the parameters, and then I'm kind of like open-minded to it. And it's like because I continue to have those kind of like situations, like I haven't really had that many relationships in my life, but like because I kept like accepting, situationships more than actual relationships, I was just kind of like, all right, maybe like I don't have an issue with like, exploring other things. Like I did become a little bit more fluid into just expecting like, all right, well, if you are interested in me, you just show that you're interested in me. But I'm not. I was never really possessive in the sense of like, because you're exploring situations with other people, that I'm worried about like what you got going or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's kind of like how I came into the relationship, whatever. But I think it's funny though, because now that I am in this, I make sure to kind of like check each scenario like a little bit more in depth. Kind of like, oh, okay, cool. Like just like, where are you going? What? Like, who are you talking to?
Talking with me?
Yeah. It's like I'd be like, oh, like, where are you going? Who are you talking to? What time you gonna get home again? And it's like, it's subconscious, because like I don't, like, obviously I trust him, but I think that's part of me like protecting myself for the future, because I'm just like, all right, well, let me just kind of like know what's going on going into the situation. That way later on I can like give you the benefit of the doubt, whereas I feel like you kind of like more so giving me the benefit of the doubt off jump. You give me the benefit of the doubt off jump, but you still kind of be like, kind of leave it as like a strike, like, all right, cool, like this is throwing me off. Then you like kind of like, then other things come up, and then,
but I won't say nothing though.
Right, you won't say nothing.
So I think that's another thing too. Like, so because we were thinking about this whole concept of like jealousy in relationships, and I think the thing about jealousy is I think jealousy is natural. I think it's I think people have different jealousy thresholds, right? Like some people, you know what I'm saying? So I think jealousy is natural. I think people get jealous, right? I mean, when you were a kid and your mom gave your brother a toy and then you give you one, you got jealous, right? It's an emotion. It happens. So I don't think people should like not acknowledge that it's an emotion and that it's going to happen. I think the main thing is being reflective and not letting the jealousy consume you.
I guess to close this video out to some extent, what do you feel like other people should take away from this video, or like maybe even like talk the situation with like Jada and Will, like what's like one piece of relationship advice you give to others?
Yeah, I mean, I think like from Jada and Will, and I think ours as well, as I think one is like communication is key. Like, I mean, based on, a lot of, me looking at, my friends' relationships, my Facebook friends' relationships when they've been on Facebook and let everybody know their business. I mean, a lot of it seems like, a lack of communication and open and honest conversation about where we are. Like, are we on the same page? I think that doesn't happen. That's definitely something that I've learned to do more of. Being an August Alsina I've been August in situations where it was like, I got my heart crushed, right? I've been to Jada in situations where I've kind of like went into situations to be a helper and then got a little too involved and got entangled. you know, then I've also been like the wheel where it's just kind of like, hey, y'all got a lot going on, I'm gonna go over here.
Yeah.
You know, so I think the main thing is like just open and honest communication about where we are. Like what page are we on? Are we on the same page? And I think being open and honest about that, like if you're not on the same page with somebody, telling them I am not on that page.
Right.
You know, not saying you're on the same page and hoping stuff's gonna come around. But yeah, I think other stuff is just, you know, people need to think about compatibility versus chemistry. You know, I think a lot of times we get caught up in chemistry when it's compatibility that has longevity.
True. Yeah, I think like in the moment people are thinking like, all right, well, if I have chemistry with somebody, then that means that I must be like so drawn and compelled to them, but not realizing that, especially when it comes to like lust, like that is like a temporary thing. Like obviously you can still maintain like a certain romanticism, but like the physical and like your attraction isn't everything, and attraction in reality also fades over time, like as you age especially. So it's just kind of like you have to be really compatible with somebody to know that y'all can really, you know, maintain a friendship above all, you know, like within that.
I think that's key too, is like friendship. And I wouldn't use the word lust. I would use more infatuation, because I think lust is like has very like conservative religious connotations. So I would say infatuation. But I think what you said.
I think for me, I thought the point that Jada made about like codependency was really strong. About her kind of saying that like it took her being in that situation to realize that there was still things that she needed to work on within herself, and that she didn't need to seek it in other people, you know. And I think that allows us to dive deeper into ourselves and to do the inner work and really like heal like our like traumas and stuff. And I think like sometimes the thing is that certain traumas are not like, they don't come off as like a super traumatic situation to where you're like, oh, like I don't think there's anything wrong with healing other people or helping other people. But when you think about it, there has to be some kind of balance. Like you can't just be taking care of people without taking care of yourself. So I think that was one important thing that I got from it. And obviously like it doesn't necessarily apply to our situation, but I think overall it's definitely like something to take away from it. I think from us, it's really the communication portion, like the communication portion, and then also like the compatibility aspect, because like I feel like because we are so compatible, I feel like you understand me to like a deeper level and understand like to a deeper extent than other people would, because in some instances we're damn near the same person, you know. So yeah, like I feel like that's kind of what helps us out a lot.
Yeah, I guess last piece of advice is like, you know, I would just say for folks to stop going into relationships thinking that it's gonna be perfect. Like it's gonna be like this romantic Notebook. What's the black movie that came out with Issa Rae? The Firework or something. The Photograph. Like, no, like, and even in them movies, there's trouble and trial and tribulation. Yeah. Right, but I think stop going into relationship with these unrealistic expectations that it's going to be perfect. Like, I went into our relationship, like, understanding like there's going to be some tough times. Now, when I say tough times, I'm talking about like the moments when the fire dies down and you all need to kickstart it. I'm not talking about abuse. I'm not talking about deception or manipulation. If you are in a relationship and you are experiencing abuse, deception, or manipulation, blink once, right? Get out of that relationship. I'm not saying that's when we talk about like relationships are gonna be hard. I'm not saying you need to be in that. Right?
Yeah, and to that point, thanks for taking part in this conversation. I appreciate you, love you, all that good stuff.
Love you too.
And hopefully you all enjoyed our conversation and were able to take some things away from it. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe, like, comment below your thoughts as well, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.
And if you don't subscribe, we on your ass.
All right, peace out.
Boy.
So I want to say thank you to my mom. She tell my small. How low, wherever you say I will go.